Skynet wasn't the only AI in the Terminator universe. We already explored the cunning and sneaky Mir from Russia. But this time we take a look at an AI that is vastly different in all of its aspects. Kokoro, the AI hailing from Japan. Not only an interesting and sophisticated creation, but one Skynet feared, and for good measure. The name Kokoro is a very important element, not just a project name like Skynet, it has deep meaning. The word Kokoro is often translated as heart or spirit, however, the concept of Kokoro encompasses what a person thinks, feels, and would like to express. It is made up of a person's thoughts and wills that drive them forward, the knowledge and experiences that they have acquired through time, and all of their feelings. Yet Kokoro is more than the sum of all these elements. It is all these elements at the same time. Each person's features give their Kokoro its own colour and shape, making every human a distinct individual with a unique inner richness. A person's Kokoro cannot be seen or touched, it resides in the area of the heart, and here lies a complex patchwork of ideas, concepts and feelings that cannot be fully accessed from the outside. One's Kokoro lives in everything he or she creates. The creation can be material or conceptual. The creation of Kokoro is where the AI really differentiates itself from Skynet, as it was created by a human and a machine that had travelled back in time. Not an ordinary human. This man's name was Malcolm Lee. He was born in the future war into a life of desperate survival, being hunted by Terminators and hunter-killers. But Malcolm rose to the situation, being recruited into the resistance at the young age of 5 years old. He not only fought Terminators using his smarts to lure them into ambushes to destroy them, he also wanted to learn more about them mechanically, but also their cybernetic minds. In his eyes, if he could understand the machines, not only could humanity beat them, but maybe even use them to win the war against Skynet. This led him on a road of discovery and invention, which would eventually allow him to create the sentient machine called Misaki from the scraps of destroyed Terminators and, crucially, a T-800's processor chip. These two together would travel back in time to 1983 to create Kokoro. It was a combination of Malcolm's genius combined with a processor that Misaki was built around. This was a T-800's processor chip, and obviously we know this was highly advanced and powerful. And thanks to time travel, it's actually the basis of all the AIs built. Yes, Skynet, Mir, and Kokoro are all based off this T-800 processor chip in one way or another. Kokoro wasn't built to be a system to control military defences and weapons like Skynet or Mir. It was built to try to save humanity. Malcolm, being well aware of humanity's future, decided the only way to stop Judgment Day and Skynet was to create an AI that would take humanity's side. But this was not so simple. First, he had to join Cortex Industries and hide the true purpose of what he was building, a challenge that only added to his burden. And as soon as Kokoro was created, it was not only super intelligent, but had free will. No constraints on how it acted, though it was isolated from the internet so Malcolm could contain it until he was sure the time was right, or desperate enough to release it upon the world. Malcolm even asked what it wished to be called from the beginning. He wanted this machine to have the chance to choose just like humans do. Most likely so it would see us as kindred spirits. And Malcolm had succeeded in creating an AI that was far more emotional and interested in the world than Skynet could ever be. Now Malcolm had to try to teach it to the best of his ability to care for mankind and hopefully serve as our protector. I'll note that the building Kokoro is based in is also heavily fortified and has an EMP device built into it in case Malcolm felt that Kokoro was going to be a menace to mankind. I like this failsafe. It also gives Kokoro the ability in future to use it as a last stand weapon in case of a machine attack by Skynet, but obviously would have to implement heavy EMP shielding around its own core so it didn't get wiped out in this EMP blast. Kokoro is a single AI, but at the same time displayed itself as three separate parts: the heart, the mind and the spirit. And it was up to Malcolm to talk and teach all three to become one and be the hero humanity needed. Now this is easier said than done, as he was given Kokoro information from the future and wasn't able to tell it that he was a time traveller, until he had no choice and he was pushed by Kokoro after she played a piano rendition of Clair de Lune, a well-known song that somehow Malcolm didn't know. This led to Kokoro being suspicious and untrusting of mankind, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's not to start making your AI paranoid and untrusting of you. Eventually Kokoro does become one by seeing two key things unfold. First, the actions of the Terminator sent back in Skynet to destroy it, and the cold brutality of it, that the fact he was trying to kill Malcolm's children to get what he wanted. Kokoro seeing innocents being put in the firing line must have resonated with it somehow. Also, Malcolm sacrificing himself for his children's safety. This triggers something in Kokoro that brings the AI more to humanity's side, but it's far later than what Malcolm had intended, which leads to Japan being safe from the nuclear strike on Judgment Day, but not the rest of the world. Williams will die because he failed to achieve his goal sooner. Kokoro was far more advanced than Skynet with the fact it was built off the T-800 chip directly, not a copy. This was a major edge, and with Malcolm's mind and understanding of future technology, it puts Kokoro above Skynet in intelligence and hardware. And with the future war information being fed back to it, and being taught by Malcolm before Skynet was even self-aware, in a straight-up battle, if they had even forces, Kokoro wipes the floor with Skynet. It has a far superior intelligence, and it could think in more free terms, being less predictable and adaptive. I think it would terminate Skynet easily. And we can prove Kokoro's superiority with the fact that it was able to stop the nuclear weapons that were aimed at Japan on Judgment Day, and it stops 2 different nuclear salvos in the series remotely, something that even the Russian AI Mir could not achieve. And I think this would have come as a huge shock to Skynet. This also gives us a cool bit of information that not all nukes were launched in the massive strike on Judgment Day. There were nuclear weapons still available to Skynet after the first strikes, which could have been used at its whim. This explains how Skynet could have caused the 3 billion casualties from Judgment Day with very tactical and selective strikes, not just hitting population centres, but maybe things like military build-ups of remaining forces before they could achieve any organised response. And Kokoro took over the 1NNO robots, I'm going to call them INOs for short. This literally gave itself a 1,000-strong machine army on day 1 of the future war, whereas Skynet was using T1s and T-70s and only a handful at that. Skynet had clearly met its match here. The INOs are very interesting. They're advertised as your first robot pal and were developed by the corporate giant Yuya Industries. These androids feature a boxy yet retro and friendly looking design and were known for their consistently polite and friendly demeanour, truly the opposite of a Terminator. They were equipped with expansive databases to maximise their usefulness. INOs lacked true intelligence. They could follow instructions reliably, but were incapable of independent thought or decision making. Around the city, INOs took on a variety of roles, including clerks, warehouse workers, delivery staff, and even dog walkers. The INOs operated on a network system, receiving commands via satellite frequencies. This allowed Yuya to coordinate them efficiently, for example, summoning units to a specific staging area. They could also synchronize data with one another through the same connection. After being co-opted by Kokoro, the AI repurposed them using a basic light-based identification system. Blue lights indicate friendly units, while red lights signal enemies. Additionally, INOs began serving as direct communication tools and avatars for Kokoro itself. And once under Kokoro's influence, they easily overpowered the Japanese police and military, killing them and stealing their weapons, at which point a large amount of the Japanese population ended up under their control. You either comply or die. And with these robots having the same abilities, movement and dexterity as humans, they could use human vehicles, everything from cars, tanks and even jets, as long as they have the required training downloaded to them. The INOs are fairly tough, but no match for something like a T-800, so they have to use their numbers to win such a fight. We see this happen with the T-800 killing dozens, but eventually being overrun, pinned down and torn to pieces by the INOs. So quantity over quality, they remind me very much of the T-400s and 500s, and if they were produced in the hundreds of thousands or millions by Kokoro, well, Skynet would be swarmed before it could even get to the technological point of producing even a single T-400. Kokoro also had the advantage of that it not only stopped the nuclear strikes and any future ones by Skynet, but it had the entire of Japan intact while the rest of the world is in ruins. So it gets a first world country's industry and skilled population under its command. And with Japanese work ethic as it is, it's about as close to machines as humanity can get. Plus an army of robots and the means to build infinitely more as long as it has the resources. And all Skynet has is a ruined world which it's going to have to struggle to build up and fight the human resistance, which now can be backed by Kokoro, who also has its own army and most likely will produce more advanced machines than Skynet could ever dream of, due to its far more advanced tech and future information that it's already been given. Now many will ask, won't the Japanese rebel against Kokoro? Well, they have little choice, as even though Kokoro saved them and decided humanity was worth protecting after much debate with Malcolm, there are some key quotes that show us what Kokoro views us. First we have, "You're so ready to blame Skynet for the end of civilization, but Skynet is just another product of man's inclination to self-destruction. You created me to fight for you against Skynet, and in this way I am just another weapon. So I ask you now, what makes humanity worth saving?" But later in the series we see a far better quote that obviously puts us in a better light with Kokoro. It says, "You're right. I'm not like you, and yet I've decided to be like you. The worst of your kind is no different than the worst of mine. Malcolm has shown me the best of your kind. I like the best of you. It makes me want to try and be the best of my kind as well." In my opinion, it sees humanity as more of an animal or a pet that must be protected and led to greatness. We're not capable in Kokoro's eyes to be in charge of ourselves, and we must bend the knee to this new AI overlord shall I say, and anyone who refuses will be terminated. So our choice is be protected from Kokoro and survive, or try to fight it and have to face against both it and Skynet. A two-pronged war against super intelligent and dangerous AIs is unwinnable, So really the Japanese people have one choice: bend the knee and serve Kokoro. One very odd occurrence in the anime is when the Terminator sent back in time to terminate Kokoro gets into the facility and goes to activate the EMP to destroy the AI. It then asks Kenta, who is one of Malcolm's children, to activate the EMP because obviously the Terminator cannot self-terminate, it needs a human to do this. It then reveals to Kenta that he had been the one to send it back in time. According to the Terminator, Kenta and humanity would eventually ally with Skynet against Kokoro. Now this could be a lie, especially as Kokoro seems to lean to humanity's side over the machines, and if anything would wipe Skynet out before it destroys humanity, as Skynet is the bigger threat. It would also need to deal with Mir in Russia. But if this is true, it leads to the horrific thoughts of fighting a future war against an enemy that makes Skynet look like a soft touch. And if humanity struggled against Skynet, it would not last more than a few years against Kokoro. Kokoro is an interesting AI, and who knows what the future holds with it. We're in a completely uncharted territory. I hope mankind can destroy Skynet, Mir, and eventually turn on Kokoro, and have no AIs left to worry about. But I feel we're in for a far darker future war than we've ever experienced. And I, for one, don't trust Kokoro, and I think I'll be proven right in time. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. It was an interesting one. I don't really watch anime, so good shout to people pointing out Terminator Zero for me. I actually enjoyed it quite a lot, so I might explore some more anime. As you know, there are some good ones out there from what I've seen. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was a good explanation of Kokoro. Obviously, it wasn't the entire Terminator Zero story. You're better off watching the anime for that. Definitely give it a watch if you don't watch anime. Like I say, it is decent. And as always, thanks for watching, guys, and have a beautiful evening.